And then in 1997, he was elected as the deputy president of the African National Congress. The president was Mr. Thabo Mbeki. And during his term, he allowed to be led. Even when he was undermined, given lesser responsibilities, treated with disdain by President Mbeki and his lieutenants. The abuse of President Zuma happened when he was the deputy president of the ANC. Left, right, and center. All sorts of charges concocted against him. Threatened with imprisonment every day. Appointed deputy president of the Republic of South Africa in 1999. And later on got fired in a humiliating way. When he was deputy president of the Republic, President Mbeki took all the powers which he had himself as deputy to President Mandela, and possibly left President Zuma with convening the South African National AIDS Council. But the strategic powers which Mr. Mbeki had when he was a deputy president were shifted away. He undermined, denigrated him, and later on said, you are potentially going to be charged in a court of law because you are potentially corrupt or you are corrupt. So I'm removing you as a deputy president of the Republic of South Africa. And even that period, he still operated within the organization with humility and did his work as a leader of the movement. And a lot of people were treating President Zuma during that period like he has got leprosy. You know, in the Bible, Archbishop, and the people who had leprosy were isolated. And a large number of people got to isolate him during that period and say, no, this one is not wanted by chief. And we all know that in the 2007 52nd conference of the ANC, he was elected as the president of the African National Congress. The decisive margin. The margin was more than 1,000 votes of the delegates that were there. I was there. And we were celebrating his election that time. And you know, this is what happens. 2007 is elected president. 2008, we at that time get elected as the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress Youth League. And those of us who were elected as the National Executive Committee of the ANC Youth League were all of us who were associated and supported President Zuma, all of us. And then in September 2008, the National Executive Committee of the ANC takes a correct decision to recall former President Mbeki as the head of state and president. And you know, many people say it was a mistake. It was not a mistake. I was, that time, in Lutula House full-time. Spent 5 years in Lutula House full-time. I was a national spokesperson of the ANC Youth League. We naturally would participate in all gatherings of the ANC. The arrogance and the disdain that President Mbeki showed on the ANC leadership that time was unparalleled, was just unacceptable. There was no way the National Executive Committee was not going to recall him. Do you know, at the beginning of each year, there must be a luhutla that discusses of the ANC what government must implement. He will come there and say, no, we cannot release some of these documents to you guys because these are top secret. Cabinet is going to decide. He had created a dichotomy between the ANC and government that time, 2008. And then the National Executive Committee of the ANC took a correct decision to recall him as head of state and president. Even when President Mbeki was recalled, when President Zuma was the president, he did not say that I'm going to enter now. He didn't do that. He said, no, let's take Deputy President Khalimamutanda to be the acting president. Me, I will come in my own accord. I'm going to be elected by the people of South Africa. I'm not going to enter through a corner like this one who is the head of state now, who entered in 2018 through the corner. By himself, he was unable to get more than 50% of the vote. But President Zuma said, I'm the president of the ANC. I'm going to go and campaign for me to be elected as the president of the country. And he went on the ground to campaign. And we can say this without any fear of contradiction. As an attempt to stop President Zuma from being a head of state and president, President Mbeki associated with the formation of COPE, the Congress of the People, that time. He was the demigod, he was the one. That is why the entirety of his cabinet, all his lieutenants, went to join COPE with the hope that they will stop the rise of President Jacob Zuma as the head of state and president. With COPE in existence, COPE which had former ministers, it had multimillionaires who had benefited from the BEE of Thabo Mbeki. It had a former deputy president of the country, Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka. They could not stop the rise of President Zuma that time, because the people of South Africa understood President Jacob Zuma. They knew who he is and that he is one with the people. Do you know, if you read elections properly and then you count one by one, Prof, the number of people who voted for President Zuma to be president, they are just slightly lower than those who voted for President Mandela. But President Mbeki, anyone else who has ever led the ANC, has never received the highest number of voters than President Zuma. And these are the realities that got to define just what got to happen.